And if there was an awkward long pause there, that was just us trying to figure out what was going on. My name's Patrick, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm joined today not by Emily. Emily is out with her family for Thanksgiving, but I'm here with a fantastic replacement here, Jim Covell, our Director of Training and Interpretation. Jim, how you doing this afternoon?
Great. Glad to be with you.
Oh, excellent. So we've got folks tuning in from all around the internet right now. I'm going to pull up the chat over here on the side, but we did want to point out, Jim, something very, very exciting that we've kind of got the camera pointed at right now. Can you describe to the folks watching, what are we looking at over there? Because we had something very exciting just happen with all of the rain and the storms that have been coming by the Monterey Bay. We've got some snow next door, right?
Yeah, and that's a rarity around here, but you're looking at Mount Toro, and if you look right at the tip top part there, you can see some white. It's kind of dodging in and out through the clouds, but that's snowfall up there on top of Mount Toro. And every so often the snow level will dip just far enough. We get a little bit of snow on the peaks like Fremont Peak and Mount Toro around the bay here.
Yeah, so for you folks there that are just watching, just tuning in right now, let's see, we've got folks that are tuning in from YouTube and from Facebook. Lots of folks that are tuning in right now. We've got actually a little bit of sun that's now peeking out over the aquarium, so hopefully it'll make its way over there to the snow there on top of Mount Toro. Here we go. We've got folks that are tuning in. So we've got folks from Mobile, Alabama, Nebraska is there. Send us some of that snow. We haven't had any stick for the last few years. Derry, New Hampshire, Oregon, Elk Grove. Happy Friday, everybody. So, Jim, can you tell us how frequent is it to see snow here on the nearby peaks? I've only seen it a handful of times myself.
Yeah, and that's maybe once a winter we'll get snow for just a day or so, and then it melts off pretty quickly. Every so often we'll get a spell of cold weather, and we might get snow for a few days that will stick for a few days, and then maybe about once every 30 years we'll have the snow level drop down. I've actually seen snow right around the edge of town in Monterey here.
Oh, really?
Once or twice in the last 30 years.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty rare.
Yeah, so that cold that we've just experienced there with the snow, you'll also have some snow in Big Sur and other areas here around the zone. But usually, it's actually really good for the animals that are here in the Monterey Bay. It doesn't get to freezing down on the water here in the Intertidal all too much, so kind of helps that marine influence kind of helps a lot of those animals maintain some semblance of normalcy even throughout the winter, right?
That's right. You know, some of you might live on other coasts where it gets quite a bit colder, and you might get even a little shell ice forming right around the edge of the ocean. And as tides and waves move that shell ice up and down, it tends to scrape some of the animals and seaweeds off the rocks. So we're fortunate that doesn't happen here around Monterey. So our animals living right around the edge of the ocean never have to worry about dealing with ice here. Kind of like all of us living around the edge here. We don't have to deal with snow and ice right here in town either.
Right, exactly. And sorry if I'm appearing a little bit distracted here. I'm trying to zoom in a little bit here on that peak. So we should be able to, yeah, here, I'll just zoom us in right here. And actually, we've got a fresh little layer of snow that seems to be coming on right now. It is raining here in the Monterey Bay. Off and on. We've got folks on the back deck right now just below us that are enjoying a little bit of respite there, but I do see the staff member with their jacket right outside getting ready for the rain, ready to come here. So Big Sur has snow. Yeah, we've got some very tall peaks over down there in Big Sur. I've heard of some snow up higher there. Got folks tuning in from Fort Wayne, Indiana there, Jim, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We've got all of the Zooms there from Sarah over there on Twitch. Portland, Oregon is tuning in. So Jim, we wanted to, I wanted to sit and chat to you not only because it's just extraordinary, and this also looks like it appears that we're working to folks out there, but really we're just hanging out, staring at the ocean.
Time here.
Oh, this is beautiful. Jim, we were talking a little bit about storms here in the Monterey Bay. We just had, I mean, it is just absolutely flat calm out there right now. Here, I'll transition that over. You can see just how just glassy it is, but we had a lot of storm and wave action that was happening a little bit, and the aquarium being right over the water, we've had some interesting things happen over the years here at the aquarium with storms coming by. So as it's raining, when those big waves come up, can actually impact the aquarium pretty heavily, right?
Yeah, actually, November is often when we get our first real winter storms. And those storms are coming here out of the Gulf of Alaska. So they've got thousands of miles of open ocean for those waves to build as they move down towards the California coast here. So when they hit Monterey, we can have some pretty good wave action. And then if you think about the tides and stack those big waves on top of a high tide, and we start to get some of our real good winter high tides this time of the year, now you've got the recipe for some pretty heavy seas hitting the coast here. And a good example a few years back was a November storm where the waves were actually a little over 50 feet outside the mouth of the bay. And even by the time they hit Cannery Row here inside the bay, those waves are still about 17 feet.
17 feet.
And just for point of reference, the floor of the aquarium is 17 feet above sea level.
Wow.
So now we're looking at waves that are just about up at our level here.
Wow.
And when those waves hit the aquarium, we had just opened our new open sea wing, and part of that hangs out over the ocean. Some of those waves started crashing up underneath the overhanging deck of that building, and some driftwood in the waves then became a battering ram. And every big wave would roll some of that driftwood around, and it started breaking out pipes that were underneath the building. And as those pipes broke out, then some of those were our floor drains. So then with the broken pipes, every big wave that came in would run inside the broken pipe and up through the floor drain. And it turned our drains into geysers in the first floor of that building.
Wow.
So that was a pretty exciting high tide that day.
Sort of like those different blowholes in the Intertidal around the world, right? Where you just have the waves breaking, and like you see a lot of videos of people putting their heads over and just being blasted in the face. So you could have recreated that back in the day in the open sea.
Yeah. We wound up having to put sandbags on top of our floor drains to keep the water from bubbling up through the drains.
Wow, that's incredible. I wanted to, because we've got some sun, there might be a rainbow we might not be able to see from here. But Jim, you were saying we've had quite the good rainbows here the last few days, and I wanted to see, if I can pull this one up here. So this one's actually, this image here I took on Wednesday, so right before heading out for my Thanksgiving. Just happened to be down here at the aquarium, and let's see, that should look pretty good. Just need to stretch it out a little bit. Live TV production, everybody. And by the way, if you're just joining us, my name's Patrick. This is my good friend Jim, and we are sitting up here in the tower room here. And actually, we're going to be able to see the tower room where we're sitting. It's the top windows. Let's see. Ooh, computer, you got this. There we go. All right, let's transition us over. And there's that beautiful. That's a beautiful view that we had there on Wednesday. That was just absolutely gorgeous with the rainbow there. So a question for you, Jim, maybe what was it like for the people that were thinking about building the aquarium being right over the water like that? We've got folks that are tuning in from all around here. What's it like to be right there over the water when you're building an aquarium?
Well, and we knew that we would get heavy seas hitting the aquarium. In fact, if you look at the aquarium, and you might even be able to see it in that photo that's up there, our seawalls here, and some of those seawalls are actually from the old Hovden cannery that was here before this was an aquarium. And so they're not only thick concrete, but if you look at the top of that seawall, you'll see that it actually bends back out towards the ocean. So the way the seawalls were built around the aquarium here, when a wave crashes into that seawall, as it moves towards the top of the seawall, that recurved concrete actually turns the wave energy back on itself. And so we get surprisingly little damage from driftwood and waves hitting the aquarium, as long as they're not over the top of those seawalls. And of course, as sea level continues to rise, we have to start thinking about that more and more now.
Yeah, that's certainly something that maybe, when the aquarium was being built, didn't have to think too much about sea level rise and, having to relocate the Monterey Bay Aquarium elsewhere. Otherwise, it's going to become the Monterey Bay Aquarium scuba diving experience, right. Pretty much. Yeah. Just get to come and dive. We can put George and Gracie from Star Trek back somewhere in the exhibit hall.
Bring them back from the 24th century.
Exactly. I wanted to say hello to the folks that are there in the chat. Hello, Emily, tuning in there over on Twitch. Thanks for being there. Hey, Knoxville, Tennessee. Hello. We got rainbows. We got folks that are tuning in from Oregon. Oh, this is excellent. Okay, so I'm going to transition us over here right now very quick, Jim, because look, we got sun on the beach now.
All right.
Dumping rain on Mount Toro where the snow was that we were mentioning at the start there. So go back to the beginning of the broadcast. But yeah.
But now there's something else while we're looking at the beach. So people don't realize that rainfall around the bay is key to a lot of different things. And actually, the sand you're looking at that beach is also connected to the rainfall. When we get these big storms and that water comes flowing down coastal streams here, that's part of what moves that sand down the streams and out into the bay. And from there, then our wave patterns distribute that sand up and down the shores of Monterey Bay. So without these storms, we wouldn't get the sand supply that continues to refresh the beaches here around Monterey Bay. So even looking at the sand and the sand dunes behind them, all of that is connected to these storms on the bay.
Yeah, and that everything being connected is something that you end up coming back to all the time when you're here. There's so many quotes related to it. If you start thinking about one thing, you start thinking about all of it, right? Paraphrasing John Muir and obviously many other folks out there that have said pretty much the same thing. So you think about the rain and how it eventually goes somewhere, whether into the aquifers or lands on a dune and washes everything out into the ocean. And so this first rain, because we haven't had these big storms here in a while, these first rains can have a pretty huge impact on the ocean animals and the wildlife and everything from that land-sea connection that happens, right?
Another great example, when we get our first heavy winter rains, as the streams rise, it also has a tendency to wash out wood and branches and tree trunks and so on that have fallen down into those stream beds through the summertime. Those get moved out into the bay, and then that becomes a great food supply for all the gribbles and shipworms, the little animals out here that make their living eating wood. And so that's fresh meal for them. I think they look forward to these winter storms because it's new wood coming in. At the same time, if you talk to mariners out here on the bay, all of that new wood out here in the bay is also a new navigational hazard. So if you read the logs from the old skippers around here, when they were sailing into the bay after a storm like this, they'd have to post somebody to look for logs floating in the water, what they call dead men out there floating in the water. If you, with a wooden hull boat, if you crashed into a big log that's hanging vertically in the water, that could do some damage. Yeah. So what the gribbles and shipworms love, the sailors weren't too excited about.
Yeah, it's just making me think so much about what they're thankful for during Thanksgiving. Is like that first rain happening around that time. Like, okay, we have the provision there from land coming out, and so besides the sailors being affected by the driftwood, there are other folks, fishermen, that might actually be looking for those big piles of driftwood, because this is something that really kind of blew my mind when I first was thinking about it, is that fish out in the ocean, they love structure. They love just like anything floating, anything that provides a little bit of cover, habitat, any sort of crevice or something. They love it. And that's not just a reef or a kelp forest. It can be these massive, massive piles of wood floating out there, which can also have just big kelp tangled into it. And that can be a big nursery and hunting ground for other animals out in the open ocean. So you don't think about a redwood or something on land as being an integral part of the open sea ecosystem, but it actually is, right? Yeah. So let's see. Let's go to the questions here, because folks they love you, Jim. Look, thanks, Jim, for all the info from Ida there on YouTube. Talk about what happens, results of these rains. Oh, thanks, Patsy, for tuning in. We got Florida, born and raised in Monterey over there. Awesome. Thanks for being there. Oh, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about maybe how a freshwater downpour from the sky might affect intertidal animals or other organisms that are there on the shore? Because, we got freshwater, saltwater. What's it like for an intertidal animal having its tide pool filled up by however much water that is
Yeah,
coming
that's a
down,
great
right?
question. So animals that live in the intertidal have to be some of the most hardy and resilient species out there in the ocean. They're adapted to these situations. So if you're living in a tide pool, yeah, you can have a cloud burst and you're soaking in almost entirely fresh water, and they can withstand that for 6 or 8 hours until the next high tide comes in. At the same time, those same animals might be high and dry during a low tide in the summer when water's evaporating from their tide pool and it's be even saltier than the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So those animals can adjust to a wide variety of salinity or salt content in the water around them. And we see the same thing also. We talk a lot about Elkhorn Slough, coastal wetlands here around the edge of the bay. And those animals living back up in the slough during the summertime, it can be saltier than the ocean. And right now, I'm guessing with all the freshwater inflows into the slough, a lot of those animals are living in brackish water that is closer to fresh than seawater right now.
And it's difficult to overstate how difficult that is, because when you have excess salt outside of your body as one of those animals, it wants to take the fresh water from inside your body and just via osmosis try to regulate that. So you're having water being sucked out of you, and then if there's fresh water on top of you, it's trying to take your salts away from you. So it's just this tug of war of your internal seasoning, as it were. And if you get the seasoning off, that's kind of it for you. So
And those animals, it's pretty remarkable physiologically how they're able to withstand those changes back and forth.
yeah, and for Luis tuning in, yes, it did really snow. We're pointing our camera over at Mount Toro, but of course, right when we started, it started to rain again, at least in our area. It could be dumping some fresh snow there on top of Mount Toro. What I can do, if Jim wants to Vanna a little bit and tell us some of his favorite things about seeing the weather change over the year, I'm going to see if I can pull up some photos of the snow that we had on Fremont Peak and put them up here on the screen. But Jim, take it away while I get distracted over here. Tell us a little bit about the seasonality of the Monterey Bay with the storms and the summer. How does that change? Has it changed over time? How does it change throughout the year? What does that look like for a visitor or an animal living nearby?
Yeah. And typically we think about wintertime, where we are now, is a relatively short phenomenon. And of course, for a lot of you in other parts of the country, you probably wouldn't even think of this as winter because snow is very rare. Actually, rain is relatively rare. Our average rainfall here is only about 14 to 16 inches per year. Monterey technically could be called a desert. So precipitation in any form is kind of an unusual event for us, something we look forward to, but it can be pretty rare. And even in the wintertime, we can have some beautiful warm days in the 70s here, and it rarely gets down anywhere close to freezing at night. So we're pretty fortunate right here. Now, the influence of the bay only extends a short distance inland. So if we go inland another 10 or 15 miles, then we don't get that moderating influence of the water, and we can have temperatures that go down towards freezing or quite a bit hotter in the summertime. So our seasons are a little bit different here. Summertime can be cool and foggy, again, because of the bay and the fog and marine layer that we get here keeps it from getting hot in the summertime, and likewise the bay keeps it from getting that cold in the winter. So we're pretty spoiled here now when I think about it.
Yeah, why are we live streaming this and telling everyone about it? Everyone's going to want to come. No, absolutely, everybody should come down and hopefully come to the aquarium and take a look. I almost have it here, Jim. I'm just doing a whole lot of technology. Jim is privy to what it takes to set up one of these live streams with all you folks out there. So he took a lot of behind the scenes photos of me tearing my hair out trying to figure out. That's why I got the hat on for today. Okay, now saving this image, and I'll bring it up here in just a little sec. But thank you, everyone who's tuning in from around the world. Once again, my name is Patrick, and next to me is Jim Covell, and we are here sitting overlooking the beautiful Monterey Bay. We wanted to share with you some of the rain storms that were happening. Now it's kind of covering up, but it did snow over there beyond the Monterey Bay. We're kind of looking straight over towards Seaside here right now, towards Mount Toro. And we're going to show you a quick photo here, if I can bring it up, of the snow that we had last year on Fremont Peak, which was something absolutely extraordinary. So we are almost there, figuring it out ever so slowly. But Jim, can you tell us maybe a little bit about, let's see. We've got, okay, sorry, there's a lot of things that are happening here. We've got, can you tell us about Community Week here coming up for the folks that happen to be tuning in? Community Week is coming up. Very exciting.
Yeah, and if you happen to live within the 3-county area around here, so Monterey and Santa Cruz and San Benito County, every year the Aquarium has our community open house, and it's our way of giving back to the local community and the people that support us throughout the year. So if you live in that Tri-County area from December 7th through the 15th, you're welcome to come down, be our guest. Your admission is free at the Aquarium. And so we encourage everybody to come down, and we're all neighbors here. We like to invite all the neighbors in and just show off the aquarium a little bit and say hi to all of our community neighbors and help give back to the community that really helps us so much throughout the year. We'll have some special programs during that time, so we'll be doing a lot of our blended programs. So if you come on down, you'll get to hear some of our narrations, for example, in a blended program with English and Spanish blended together. So it's a fabulous week here at the Aquarium, and a chance to come down, be our guests with free admission.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jim, for that information. That worked out great. That was a little ad plug there in the middle of ad break. We're almost a professional podcast here. We should start doing ad breaks for some kind of deliver to your door mattress or something, and then we'd be right there. Okay. So if you noticed at one point the webcam that's on Jim and I disappeared, that's because I dragged this image into the wrong layer. Here now is this beautiful image that Emily took last year, where you can see, let's see that direction right there. You can see the snow on Fremont Peak. So you got the bay in the front and the snow there in the background. Cannot see Fremont Peak right now over beyond Salinas because it is probably raining on it as we speak from here. But anyway, that's a little bit of that snow there that we promised. Let's see. We've got a question here. Just a quick question to break in. Would you give us a forecast for market squid fishing if you had to predict? So market squid, California market squid, also known as calamari, is one of those seafoods that is incredibly, we feed a lot of squid to our animals here, a lot of it coming from this area when it's being caught here. But that market squid, I haven't heard about the fishery. That would be the Department of Fish and Wildlife, though, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody's really got a good way to predict that. When the squid show up, and the squid show up here to spawn. So sometimes they're spawning in Monterey Bay. There are a couple of other spawning spots up and down the Big Sur coast, and they're more in Southern California. And the squid they're kind of where you find them. And fortunately, when we do find them, oftentimes they're in pretty good numbers, and that's one of the big money fisheries here for fishermen. It helps keep those hardworking fishers in business around the bay. So they're always interested in what's the next squid season going to look like, and I haven't heard anything.
No, and you'll know if you folks are in the area if the squid fishing is happening, because that squid fishery actually was invented right here in the Monterey Bay area, or not. It was brought here by the Chinese fishermen that set up where the aquarium is located here. We're on top of a point that used to have a Chinese fishing village and a community here that came over in the 1800s, and they're actually the ones that brought that squid fishery. And it's very telltale because of how they go fishing for these squid at night, right?
Yeah, and the Chinese figured that they figured it out that the squid would come up attracted to light, so they could just get a little fire going in a wire basket over the side of the boat, and the squid would come up. They could just dip them out by the net full. And to this day, we still fish that way. It's a little bit more elaborate, but you'll see the boats out here at night with the kind of the green glowing lights out on the water. That's the best sign there is that there's good squid fishing going on here in Monterey Bay.
Yeah, we've got a few folks here that are letting us know. As well as Bill can remember, the last time it snowed in Santa Cruz, Monterey was February 1976 with the snow actually on the beach. That's pretty impressive there.
Pretty cold winter.
Yeah, and George Myers is letting us know that in Aptos it's currently dumping rain. Well, hello, Aptos, there across the way. We can almost see you there. Oh, excellent. Let's see. if there are any more questions. Okay, so I have a question for you, Jim, and then we're gonna leave it over to the chat. So we can't really see Fremont. We can't really see Mount Toro. Excuse me. We're looking out over Seaside over there. Can't really see the mountain over there, but we do have a few things that are going on out here. So my question to you, Jim, and then to the chat is, should I move the camera away from the snow and move it over to this little group of seagulls out there, which I believe are indicating a sea lion that might be attacking an ocean sunfish or some kind of seafood out there? Or I can direct it down beautiful Cannery Row with just amazing, amazing evening light here, amazing winter light going down. We can point it down maybe at some pelicans or some other animals that we might find. But where do you feel like we should redirect our gaze, Jim? What do you think? We can also just leave it up to the chat. You don't have to.
Wow, it's beautiful facing either direction.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
We were just looking down Cannery Row a little bit earlier, and you can see a couple of the restaurants and buildings that are built out over the bay here on old wooden piers and pilings. And when I think about storms here, that's a challenge for some of those buildings as well, because if they get a drift log in there caught up in those pilings and underpinnings and the waves start thrashing it around, it can start tearing out what's propping up the restaurant, do a lot of damage in a short period of time.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We've got a vote for Seagulls, 1 vote for Cannery Row, and we've got a hello from Chicago. Hello, Chicago. Thanks for tuning in. So maybe what I'll do is, let's see. Man, it is tough to choose. Every single option here is absolutely gorgeous. We might not see the snow here for a little bit. Let's see. We got Cannery Row. Let's take a closer look down Cannery Row. So I'm going to put the snow back up here. And then I'm going to step away, so it'll just be you, Jim. So if you feel like talking to the folks here for just a quick second. We've got a few folks that have some questions there about the Community Week. If you just want to remind people when that is, and then feel free to share a favorite community story or whatever you can come up with while I move the camera. Be right back.
Good. So yeah, just a reminder on our community open house, the aquarium is free for everybody living in the Tri-County area around Monterey here. So that would be all of Monterey County, San Benito County, Santa Cruz County. And you're all welcome to be our guests, and that starts on Saturday the 7th of December and continues through Sunday the 15th of December every day. When you come down to the aquarium, if you have your driver's license or utility bill or something else that just proves that you live somewhere in that Tri-County area, that's all we need to see. And then you are in as our guest. So I hope that you'll take advantage of that. I also wanted to mention one other thing. Every time we get this rainfall, and of course it's nice to see that rain hitting the ground and recharging our underground water storage as well as filling the streams. And there's another important function to that, is that rain coming down streams is also washing some fresh nutrients into the bay as well. And we found that on heavy rainfall years, when we get a lot of rain washing down into the bay, that following spring, sometimes we see additional plankton in the bay, and things are just a little bit richer because of the additional nutrients that are brought into our bay ecosystem here. So all these things connect up. Things that happen on the land are reflected directly in the bay. And that's also true. I always remind all of us that anything that goes on your garden or on your rooftop at home or even down the drain, that is reflected right out here in the bay as well. That's why we're all careful about products we use around our homes, because we're part of that system that drains into Monterey Bay also.
Exactly. And that is just reminding me of another image where I can rudely ignore everybody on the chat, is to try to find some of those bioluminescence images that we have from Big Sur. Just a couple years ago, there was an incredible rainy season that had many, many landslides, and all of that nutrition going out into the bay is thought to have helped produce those dinoflagellates, those bright blue and green flashes. They actually look white at night, which is something I didn't realize because your color vision kind of goes away. But we had that beautiful bioluminescence that occurred there.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, now with this view
Yeah.
of Cannery Row, you can kind of see what we're talking about. A lot of the buildings here are built kind of out over the water. I guess that's one of the advantages here. We have this beautiful view of the bay. But now, in your mind's eye, if you can imagine even a mild winter storm would bring 6 or 8 foot waves in along Cannery Row. And it's low tide right now. Lately, our tides have been like plus 6.5 feet. So in your mind's eye, if you can add about 6 or 7 feet of water on top of what you're seeing now, and then put a 6 or 8 foot wave on top of that, you can see how those waves are crashing right up at the level of these buildings now, and potentially taking out windows on some of the buildings, or sometimes we have to sandbag some of the doors and windows that are facing out towards the bay just to keep water from flooding in through them.
Yeah, it's really something else when those big waves start breaking on Cannery Row, because you're not used to seeing that amount of water motion, and you know that it's a major swell elsewhere as well. So if it's wrapping around the point there, I can't imagine what it was like if you were just trying to just work in a cannery when that was happening, you know, if that was going on.
And the old canneries that were certainly built out over the bay, a lot of times around the packing tables and so on, they just had open slats in the floor. So bits of fish and so on were falling down through the slats into the bay. That was one thing. But also, get those big winter waves, the waves would come crashing right up through the slats. And if you were working at the packing tables or someplace else on the ground floor, you might be wet from the knees down from water that was splashing up through the floorboards and getting you wet.
That's actually exactly what my friend or our friends that work over at the abalone farm. We have an abalone farm in town, folks. You'll see it if you're here at the aquarium in the morning. They often go out with their skiff and they're harvesting kelp by hand along Cannery Row and out around to Pebble Beach area. And their abalone farm hangs right below that commercial wharf, which is the wharf over from Fisherman's Wharf. And they had the high tide and the waves splashing up on them down below. It's hard work trying to farm in the ocean.
Absolutely. Yeah. I bet they got thrashed pretty good with these storms coming in here lately.
I was told it was something else. Yeah, everyone very much enjoyed their hot chocolate when they were done. So here what I'm doing, everybody, is we've got a photo here of that bioluminescence. I'm going to transition over, and you can see there that blue there in the water. That is phytoplankton, plankton that produce their own light for some pretty interesting reasons there, Jim. That's essentially their burglar alarm to let other organisms around them know that they're being agitated, and it just so happens that they're in the shore. But that bioluminescence is not abnormal in the ocean. Actually, most animals in the ocean that we've looked at in the deep sea produce their own light, and plankton also produce their own light. Isn't that incredible?
And that's actually that was an important tool for some of the sardine fishers here in the early days before we had all the electronics to see schools of fish in the water. They would go out on a dark night and look for that glow, knowing that there might be a big school of fish down there that was stirring up all the plankton and causing that bioluminescence. Wow. So you'd look for that glow. That's where you're going to set your net and see if you hauled in a net load of sardines.
Incredible. And that, again, from that land-sea connection, we've been talking about the storms that we've been having in the area. I mean, there are just storm clouds all up and down here, all the way around where we can look here, Jim. You just see so much moisture in the air. And that's where that connectivity of, when we talk about things that happen on land, also happen to the ocean. So many of us have traveled hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, maybe to go see their family. And so you can see how you're connected to your family by doing that. Well, the rest of everything else, what they're doing in the middle of the country or, wherever you happen to be, it all kind of works together. If you think about it just enough, sometimes our rain is coming from across the ocean, and other times it's coming down from the north. And so that raindrop that's falling on your head when you're here in Monterey may have traveled a very long way. So we're actually all in that same connection. And then the plankton out there, brilliantly glowing, coming from soil that maybe you went on a hike over just a little bit ago.
All part of the same system. Even the waves that are washing up here have traveled several thousand miles to get here.
Yeah, it's really incredible to think about. Man, the light is good right now, everybody.
It's spectacular. Beautiful sunlight against just a dark, dark background with the rain clouds. It's one of those spectacular scenes on the bay today.
Oh, yeah, it's great. Let's see. Let's go to chat. We've been not ignoring you folks. We've been blissfully enjoying our surroundings there. Thank you for providing us an opportunity to come and sit here, everybody. Zebra Lover, that was down off of Big Sur. That's near Garrapatta State Park where that image was taken, but there was bioluminescence all up and down Big Sur at that time. We had some folks watching at Simi. Yeah, the bioluminescence happening down there. Excellent. Let's see. So Jim, maybe we often get these questions. What is it like when there's a storm for a sea otter or a whale or a cormorant? What is that like? We see the water just coming at you, like, oh man, that's pretty intense. But for these animals that live in it, what is it like for them when you're looking at it? Because it varies, obviously.
It's funny. Somebody asked me the other day, where do the whales go when it rains? And it's like, they're wet already, so they don't mind. But yeah, some of the animals like sea
Can you imagine
otters,
swimming into a dry spot as a whale?
Well,
that must be the same thing as like us stepping in a puddle. We're like, oh, that was weird. And then they like happen to swim through an area that's completely bone dry. Like, that was bizarre.
That would be very unpleasant.
I don't think the physics of that quite work out, but yeah.
But for like sea otters that are kind of typically nearshore animals in here, when we see these big waves crashing through, and you'll see a sea otter sometimes, they might swim a little farther offshore where maybe the waves aren't as big. Waves tend to build as they get into shallower water. So sometimes, just like sailors might take a boat a little farther offshore to get away from big waves, sea otters might swim a little bit farther out, or else they have hangouts that are sheltered here. We see sea otters gathering down around the harbor and the boat basin where the breakwater tends to shelter them from all that heavy wave energy. We have sea otters sometimes that will swim into the great tide pool here at the aquarium to get away from all that wave energy. So overall, the millennia that sea otters have been here, they have figured out how to adjust to those winter storms coming through. The big catch, though, as we get a little bit farther into the winter, we'll have moms with pups out here. And that adds a little more complication because now you've got a mom trying to hang on to her pup and navigate in that big water. And that's probably why we get some calls about orphan otter pups during or just after some of these big winter storms, because those big waves can sometimes separate a mom and a pup and they can't find each other again. That's exactly right. Yeah, the separation of those moms and pups there is one of the leading reasons why we get so busy in the winter taking care of those pups. And we do a lot of work in rescue and rehabilitation of these otters. And we're working with lots of partners here to hopefully expand where we can release these otters in the future. So instead of just here in Monterey Bay or in Elkhorn Slough, which you may have heard about, trying to get them into their historical range back, further north, further south. There's lots of conversations happening about where sea otters might do very well. Jim, there's a rainbow happening. Oh yeah,
right over there. Gosh. I'm gonna move the camera, everybody. So stand by here. Let me transition. Let's see. I'll transition you to the snow, Jim, but I'm going to see if I can get that rainbow. One sec.
That's not too far from my house, too. I hope there's a pot of gold at the end of that one.
That would help out.
No, lately we've had these showers moving through. So we've had bright sunlight with rain showers, as you have seen here on the camera, and that's the perfect conditions for a rainbow. So this week we've just had a spell of beautiful rainbows. And a couple times I've seen some nice double rainbows out here this week. So we've got a beautiful one right out there off of the Fort Ord Wildlands area, just behind Seaside.
I think, Jim, we have a couple of filters that might be making it.
There we go. We'll do a little technical adjustment of the equipment here. See if there we go. That's coming in nice. Oh, look at that.
Okay, let me see if I can zoom in on it now.
Yeah, if we could just get a breaching humpback whale in front of the rainbow there. And
okay.
Oh, that's spectacular.
All right, everybody, let's get you a rainbow here on the stream. There we go. Nice. Oh, that is so cool. Yeah, we've been hanging out here for just about 45 minutes here on the stream. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, my name's Patrick. This is my good friend Jim Covell, and we are blessed to be able to work here at the aquarium and show you here the rainbow happening over the bay. In fact, I can hide us here real quick. Here, we'll just get rid of us so you can just enjoy that. Oh,
the rainbow's a lot prettier than we are.
Oh, my goodness. Tell me about it. Look at that. Absolutely sumptuous rainbow over the seaside hills in Fort Ord, which, interestingly, Thanksgiving, we often spend a lot of time with our families. My dad's parents, my grandparents, met at Fort Ord back in the day. Yeah. So, when I was 5, I saw the sea otters here at the aquarium, want to come and work here. But then I realized much later, my grandparents actually lived here in the area. I didn't realize that. They were in Texas, and instead they were out here for training back in the day. So.
A lot of tens of thousands of military have come through Monterey Bay training between Fort Ord and the Defense Language Institute, the Naval Postgraduate School. So I talk to people all over the country that have spent some time here in Monterey. And they always remember fondly that time that they were here, and a lot of them would love to get back here, and not enough to join in again, but but if they could live here again, they would go for it.
Oh, certainly, man, that is gorgeous. I want to say hello to the folks from rainy Seward, Alaska. Thanks for being there. So glad you finally got some rain. I was there this summer. There had not been a lot of rain there in a while. So hello, Seward. And hello to, Bob and a few inquiring minds would like to know, Jim, what is your job at the aquarium, and have you always had the same job? What's been the Jim process here?
So, and I've done similar things for much of my time. I've been here at the aquarium for 32 years, and my job has always been first and foremost with training and working with our 700 volunteer guides here at the aquarium that are really the storytellers here at the aquarium, which kind of makes me one of the chief storytellers here at the aquarium. And that's kind of the way I see myself, is telling people the stories of Monterey Bay and things connected to the bay, so that all of us have a better understanding of what goes on out here. And through that, maybe we can make better choices about things we can do to help take care of this bay.
That's awesome. You certainly taught me a lot of things that I share enthusiastically without ever looking up any of the information. So as drift happens, there are a lot of Jim fishtails that I think are getting out there.
Some of those stories are true. Hopefully most of the stories are true.
No, you taught me to make things up convincingly. No, Jim has been responsible for the training of so many of our amazing interpreters here, our staff hanging out at the touch pools and meeting our guests directly there, and taught me a few tricks of the trade here. So yeah, that's what Jim does. Oh, we got Alan Bradley tuning in. Hey, thanks for being there. Wonderful. Okay. Shout out to Eric Quammen in the control room since the beginning. That's right, Kelly Carlson. Hello from Las Vegas. Yeah, Eric's been here this whole time.
Yeah, he's the one that put some of the water in these tanks for the very first time when they were building the aquarium back in 1983, 84.
Oh my goodness. We might have a clearing. No, not quite yet. It looked like there could have been a clearing where we might get the rainbow and the snow at the same time there, where we are currently looking in the right direction there.
I've got one more story to tell here about the bay. Just looking out on the scene we have here, that we're looking out on the kelp beds right off the aquarium. And a while back, Patrick was talking about the folks at the abalone farm that come out here, and they collect some of this kelp to feed their abalone. And there's another seasonality in the kelp forest also. So this time of the year, there's not a lot of sunlight. Kelp, of course, like land plants, needs to absorb sunshine to grow, so it's not growing much. Not as many nutrients in the water this time of the year. So the kelp forest is kind of at a standstill, just like a lot of our terrestrial forests. A lot of those trees go dormant in the wintertime. Our kelp forest is kind of dormant in the wintertime also. But then you get these big winter waves coming through, and they grab that kelp, and that kelp has a lot of resistance, hanging 60, 70, 80 feet into the water. And those waves tug and tug on the kelp, and they wash up huge amounts of kelp, tearing it loose, washing it up on local beaches. So our kelp forest tends to look pretty thin this time of the year also. And so animals like sea otters that spend a lot of time in the kelp canopy, maybe they're bunched up a little bit more. I'm looking at a bunch of sea otters right now out there that have found some of the wintertime kelp canopy to curl up in. And that might be one of the ways that they go through these stormy periods, is they'll find a little bit of kelp, which dampens wave action, and they will hang out, curl up in the kelp to anchor themselves.
Yeah, we had that one year where it was so stormy that there were 100 sea otters right here in a super raft that was just off the deck there, all clinging to the same bunk bed, as it were. Yeah.
So that's another part of the seasonality that we see right here around Monterey Bay.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, hey, everyone. We have been sitting here enjoying an absolutely sumptuous Monterey evening here, but it is coming up on time for us to, I believe, just leave the stream here where it is to let you folks get back to your families if you happen to be avoiding them or enjoying with them. I don't know like what the family dynamic is, but thank you so much for tuning in and enjoying our beautiful bay here with us, with this magnificent rainbow that is over Seaside right now, looking out over the Monterey Bay. Jim, do you have any parting words for the folks here on the stream? Any final bits of wisdom, thoughts, shopping lists for them to help you out with?
Yeah, I want to remind everybody about our community open house. So if you're one of our neighbors here in this Tri-Count area, please come down and see us from the 7th through the 15th. And you can come every day down here and enjoy the aquarium. And no matter where you are, you can come down and see this amazing scenery that we have in the wintertime. I hope you'll make the trip.
That's right. The camera decided that it was done with the live stream as well. They're right on time. So it'll be here for the community week, of course. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here live at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Happy Thanksgiving and extended weekend to all of you folks out there. We have a few things that are happening next week, and tune in for Giving Tuesday, where we're going to be doing a couple of live streams early that morning, starting with a sunrise, hopefully, and then progressing on to a few more things. So we'll see you Tuesday, at least on the live stream, everybody. But thank you again for being a part of the aquarium family. We hope to see you again soon at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. What you think about that?
Couldn't say it any better myself.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jim. Appreciate it.
You're
All right.
welcome.
We'll see you next time. And we are going to wait and